Are there topics you'd like to press into with regard to the, I don't mean style, but the content of the synopsis and of the translation? Did something catch your mind? If it didn't, or I want to bring up a few things, okay?
What I thought was important was that something that I thought you maybe mentioned on one of the early classes when you were talking about own character, and you said a particular scholar, you didn't say who it was, said in the case of Shenwang, its own character refers to produce independent of causes. Then Yongdrip refers to the object of the path of purification.
Yeah.
And was that Wonch'uk you were talking about?
No, I should say who it is, because there's no reason not to. It's Khyentse Yeshe Tupten, who is the source of this very beautiful final answer to the question about the relationship of the two emptinesses. And there's no reason why one scholar, in the part where I'm talking about the, giving these juicy tidbits about relating with Tibetan and Mongolian teachers, there's no point in giving names. I shouldn't give names. But here he is. Thanks. Where?
In the text? Well, I saw it in Wonch'uk. That sounded, when you say Wonch'uk says own character refers to the unique character, that sounded kind of like what you were saying.
Well, now the unique character of fire is Sashin Sekpa, right? Sashin Sekpa. Now, there's no other phenomenon that has this nature. Consciousness doesn't. It's not hot and burning, right? Sounds aren't.
But hot water is hot and burning.
That's the
I mean, anything hot is burning.
That has to be the fire and the water, right?
Oh,
the particles of fire.
So you could burn paper.
Huh?
So recall that you could burn paper with hot water. If you're saying hot
No,
water is
not
hot
necessarily. It depends on the type of thing you're trying to burn. With a mild fire, you can't burn steel, okay? What they debate on is you take steel and fire, you put them together long enough, and the steel becomes fiery itself. That may, no, I don't know, but anyway, it's hot and burning. And, it turns red hot. And so is what some people say is, Ja me more yoga, me mare. It's become of the entity of fire, yoga yin yang, me mare, because they've got to keep the separation. So Wonch'uk's view is that own character means that, whereas Yeshe Tupten, well, Tsong-kha-pa clearly denies that. And Yeshe Tupten, struggling to find some common meaning for the own character of Shenwang and the own character of Yongdrip. So that has to be not some other meaning of Yongdrip, like Tumu Mayimbe Tsenyi, uncommon character, but it has to be something that means Rangitsenyi Ki Truba, right? And so what is a meaning of Rangitsenyi Ki Truba that you could apply to both Shenwang and Yongdrip? And he couldn't find anything. And it's very hard to find. And so he chose dual meanings, two meanings, one for Shenwang and one for Yongdrip. And then he just really took the meaning of Shenwang something that's produced from causes and conditions, and called that the meaning of Rangi Katruba for Shenwan. And then he took the meaning of Yondru, that it's like the final disposition of things, and took that as the meaning of Yondru. Now, you have to say, it's not even sleight of hand. You know, it's in some way grossly laughable. But it's not. When you look at it another way, when you realize that that he couldn't come up with anything else, so he had to come up with something. And so it's a very refined opinion, as unhelpful as it may be. You know, I felt like puking the day that he said it. And then when I was, you know, eventually went through the course of this, I could understand why he was saying that. And he had, he had brilliant insights on big issues like the two emptinesses, and interesting positions on some of these odd things. My version, let's see if I can remember. I posit a meaning that is common to both. And I'd like to present it sometime in the debating courtyard. Ngusungi Nangyo. Ngusum Nangyo. I don't know if I have to say Ngusum Seme Nangyo, but this, at least in Sautrantika, if it's Ngusum, then it's correct, right? Doblan Tezi Matua Ripa, right? And it's Nayula Matua. Now, what are Ngusum Binayo? Appearing objects for direct perception in the mind-only system. They are Shenwan and Yondru. And it is a significant, you see, one thing you do in playing the game is you look to sources. If you don't have a source, then you look to the system and try to figure out how the system can be put together. And if you say there's no sources on this, that is very weak, because you should know the system well enough so that you can fabricate an elegant way of fitting it in, or at least, as Yeshe Thupten did, a possible way of fitting it in. Do you follow? He said a possible way. And there's an aesthetic delight, maybe not spiritual delight or something like that, but an aesthetic delight that, for instance, I took when I finally figured out what a great answer he'd come up to, despite the fact that it didn't mean very much, right? A little bit of an aesthetic delight. So I wanted to come up with something that was better. I figured I didn't want to beat out Yeshe Thupten. I mean, after all, he's the one who put together the two emptinesses for me, and so forth. And the period with him was absolutely fabulous of studying this text. I studied with many people. We just gathered in this room at my house, both of us sitting on the floor, and it was marvelous. It's just so many days of high points in one's life. Anyway, I tried to think, so I went about it by thinking of is there something that these two share, and something that's significant. Now you see in Dotabelu, the Sautrantika, the lower system, there's no direct perception of Yondru, of emptiness. They don't use the vocabulary of Yondru, but they could, right? Madhyamaka, Svatantrika Madhyamaka uses the vocabulary of the three natures, and Prasangika a little bit. I'm trying to think of something that was significant. And it's significant that in mind only, you can see emptiness directly. It's wonderfully significant. I mean, it's
You can.
you can. It's possible, and you must perceive it directly. It's the difference between the two tenet systems. So, Rangitsenyi Kitruba, I say, means, you know, Ngusungi Nayol the Truba. Now, that could be the meaning of Rangitsenyi Kitruba that was shared between the two. And then, I don't even know if you need Yeshe Tukdens on top of that, since it has such little meaning. You've already gotten that meaning from Shenwang, that it's Yutan Inle Geba. Yu is cause, and is conditions, but other types of causes. You can let give. The sutra says something like something like Rawangi Mayimbar. It has a negative and a positive. Rawangi Mayimbar. Yu Shenla Deni Geba. Something you could find in the text. So that's mine. It took years, and I'm waiting for it to be smacked down.
And a Gelugpa scholar would never rest on the negative, like not Tokwe thoughts on Mayimba, because that would apply to both too, wouldn't it?
Yeah. When you say, I mean, a common meaning of could be something like that it's not imputed by conceptuality and exists. But then what is the meaning of imputed by conceptuality? You know, to exist, to be imputedly existent, it's that it's not established by way of its own character, and it merely, you know, exists in dependence upon terms and conceptuality or something. It's circular. So that one is objectionable. It's helpful at a certain point, but it's not enough. If you take a look at the table of contents of the third volume, it lists everything by issue, right? With the titles of the issues. An own character begins on 65 and goes, well, at least to 112, considering the various things that it could mean. Just this issue. And you can see why I lifted out this material, and so otherwise you don't pass on to it and get the flavor of the text itself. There's a section on the, you know, you can see, I hope the references are there. For instance, issue 1 is what is eloquence and what is the essence? And then 2 is emptiness the essence of both sutra and mantra? 3, what else could the title mean? Because the essence of eloquence is taken to mean all of Buddha's teaching, sutra and mantra. And the essence of them is taken to be emptiness. Very good exposition by Kuntong that uses Tsong-kha-pa's other book called The Essence of Eloquence, the short one, and has dug out things in it that where Tsong-kha-pa uses the same word, nyingbo, and it's tenbe nyingbo, which means the essence of the teaching, and that's Buddha's teaching. In Lekshé, Subhashita is often used to refer to Buddhist teachings, okay? So instead of Demba, Leksheki. Instead of Dembe Nyingbo, Leksheki Nyingbo. And Lekshe is commonly used for Sangeki Demba, okay? And very good presentation, rather than his saying that my book has an essence of eloquence. Now, that's not out of place in Tibet, just as it's not out of place on the book jacket for us to say how wonderful our book is, you know, or even to contribute to the write-up that will then say how wonderful it is, or you get other people to state it. Well, they don't get their arms twisted, but the publisher wants to get good statements. Usually they lift it out of the report from a reader and then ask for their permission. So that kind of advertisement is on the jacket somewhere. And in Tibetan culture, it's right in the title. So many books are called Lekshe Nyingbo, which don't refer to the emptiness, which is the essence of Buddha's teaching, but it's just saying I did a real good job on this, and it's really eloquent, you know? So there are some where you may just want to skim what's going on in there. Then, that was very helpful. Yes?
I have a question, and maybe my confusion is because I haven't really studied the Pure material before, but I guess on page 64 you had a short paragraph.
Mind only Buddhism?
Yeah, this one we had before. 64 and 65, I guess. You had a discussion about the separation of wisdom and emptiness. And I guess my understanding of the mind only school was that really central to it is this idea that bits of wisdom that knows itself. And with Tsong-kha-pa, I guess from reading this last time, my sense was that he started a commentary on Nagarjuna and then started to write this, The Essence of Eloquence.
Let me just say, how much he did in terms of starting it, who knows? Thurman mentions that, and his source may be Ngawan Tagye's short biography of Tsong-kha-pa in a book that Thurman edited for the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. The Life and Teachings of Tsong-kha-pa or something like that. And in there it says a bit less than Thurman, but somehow Tsong-kha-pa's commentary on Nagarjuna's treatise on the middle is brought up. I mentioned this to His Holiness on the trip recently, and he said he didn't know about that, but in any case, he wouldn't have done much. But still, your point will hold. I mean, he's very interested in Madhyamaka.
I guess I'm not clear on how it is that this aspect of mind only is separated from the presentation. Other than it seems like the discussion is on objects of analysis, phenomena themselves, as opposed to what is observing those objects, or what is the quality of that wisdom. But it doesn't seem to be talked about in terms of the three natures, and I don't know if that's because it's
What doesn't seem to be?
the wisdom that's aware of itself, that the wisdom that observes the thoroughly established nature, it also observes itself, which is pretty unusual.
No.
I mean, in terms of...
Every consciousness has a rangrig, according to the mind-only system. Every consciousness is accompanied by a self-knowing consciousness. And so every eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, even conceptual, are accompanied by rangrig that knows that consciousness non-dually. Okay? Number one. Number two, your reference, I think, would be to Soso Rangrik. In terms of vocabulary, the self-knowing consciousness that accompanies the I consciousness is non-dual with it in the sense that it doesn't appear to be different from it. But again, since we're dealing with Gelu, they don't say what I would like to say, which is that the consciousness itself is aware of itself. They put some factor sort of within the consciousness that is aware of the consciousness, even though you really can't separate it out like that. Okay? I just as soon like to say, you don't need light to look at a light. The light illumines itself as it illumines other things. And you know, you say, well, does it illumine itself, or does it just have a nature of luminosity? And some people might say, well, that's why it illuminates itself. And other people would say, well, you don't have to speak of it as illuminating itself. You know, there are controversies on whether there's wrong or not within Semzum. But Soso Ranrik Begeshe, the exalted wisdom.
The
Yeah, it's as if I'm waiting for you, Sam. The exalted wisdom that individually knows itself. That's how you're taking it, okay?
Yeah.
That individually knows itself. Individually meaning you've got to do it yourself. It's, you know, it's done by your own consciousness and, you know, individually in meditative equipoise. Now, what is its object? Is its object Ram, as the term suggests, or is its object emptiness, as we were talking about, right? There's evidence in Indian mind only that the object is emptiness and not the consciousness itself. So then, if the object is, but not everybody agrees on this, and even within Gelu, okay? But almost everybody. So then what would you do with Ram that knows itself? It's just lumped with Soso Ram and then taken to mean, you know, individual, the exalted wisdom of individual realization, of your own realization.
Would that
So
be an
wrong.
affirming negation?
A consciousness? No.
No. Even though it's realizing emptiness, but it's realizing itself.
Well, you know, what they answer is, the I consciousness itself doesn't realize itself. It's the Rangrik that accompanies it that realizes the I consciousness. For instance. And just so here.
Yeah.
So you see there's no emphasis, or they deliberately are seeking not to put the emphasis on mind knowing mind, but on, which would be like, they complain, most scholars claim that this would be like doing calm abiding meditation on the mind. And, you know, getting a whole sense of mind and staying with that. Just staying with that as your so-called object. And so they want to emphasize taking the medicine of the absence of duality of subject and object, or the absence of objects being established by way of their own character as the reference of words and terms. But that medicine of the absence has to be taken.
Yeah.
Now, and it's then in highest Yoga Tantra where they rescue it back. And where the mind of clear light is, they again don't want to say it that way, I mean, but it's called the ultimate.
So how is it left out of the presentation?
It is called the ultimate, but they want to say it's, how is it left out of the presentation?
I guess that's my question.
They say that the object is emptiness, not the mind. Not the mind that is empty, the mind that is empty would be an affirming negation. But emptiness is a non-affirming negation. And that medicine has to be taken. Now, Bhava Viveka, you know, how much do mind-only scholars in India, scholar yogis in India, talk about non-affirming negations? I've never run across it, which doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But there are other statements that the path of seeing, and it's quoted in here somewhere, is it's as if the mind has stopped. And even there are now articles from scholars from various countries around the world about how mind is not the object, but emptiness is the object. In other words, a lot of people have come to see that there's a lot of evidence for it to be emptiness and not the mind. But would there really be a problem with realizing a mind that is qualified by an absence of difference of entity, subject and object, or the other entities? You see, that would be an affirming negative. And for instance, in the practice of deity yoga and tantra, the practice of causing the wisdom consciousness to appear itself as the deity, and within that to ascertain emptiness. So even though there's appearance going on, you're still ascertaining emptiness. And you can do that with regular appearances too. But within this practice of deity yoga, then it is said that it does counteract the conception of inherent existence. That's in prasangika. And it would counteract whatever problem, you know, whatever Megukunda being misconceived in Cittamatra, according to their system. So it's not wild within Gelupa to talk about concentrating on a Mayanga. But when one directly perceives emptiness alone, except as a Buddha, the claim is it's just emptiness. But there's tremendous emphasis in highest yoga tantra on the levels of consciousness and so forth. So if you carried that over to, you know, Sankhya, Gagyu, Nyingma, it's not so odd. You know, it's not so odd. The one big message I would feel is that when you apprehend the mind, it must be qualified, and you must be actively understanding the absence of difference of entity of subject and object. No matter how much they might quarrel with each other about this, if we look at the two sides of the issue and look at how they you know, balance their own systems out, I would take that as the message. But especially for some people, a mere absence, I don't mean a mere absence is not attractive, because I mean, what the hell, that's your problem. But when the mere absence appears, also something gels in the mind, and you have an experience of a different type of mind. And I guess it would be important to be aware of both. You know, not lose the absence, otherwise you wouldn't be taking the medicine. And you'd come back and think, oh, the awful world, or something like that.
It seems really valuable. I mean, it doesn't seem, my question, I guess, isn't so much what's more valid, but it's just, I just am totally confused by why it's not brought up, why the other
Why, what is not
secondary issues like the wisdom, well, like that the main focus is the object of analysis and its lack of a difference in subject of, a difference between the subject and object.
Difference of entity.
Difference of entity between the subject and object. But it's like, they're not mentioning the awareness that observes it. I mean, I don't understand how that is.
Well, that they put in, topics really come of calm abiding, where you're meditating on the mind. And then also with these few scholars who hold that you realize mind only. But yes, the direction is not put on getting a hold of that consciousness. It's assumed that, you can do that through other types of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to concentrate on the mind, then what you're concentrating on is the emptiness of the mind. Do you follow? So the procedure is exactly the same. So what you're probably more used to is a mixture of like calm abiding meditation on the mind and how to get a hold of the mind, and looked at from a Gelu perspective, and then an absence of difference of entity of subject and object, which frankly I think is very helpful. If you can get a hold of mind and some idea of what mind is, then you can be more successful at penetrating mind only. Okay, let's see. Then, what should we be doing for next time? We're hurriedly deciding. For this time, we did 1 to 26. Within the synopsis. And the next class would be Mindful Buddhism in Tibet, Chapter 2, which would be 27 to, 39. And the translation, Chapter 2, 149 to 175. Doable? Yes. Because we're going to build on that and move on.